that military leadership should be heroic leadership is intuitive in many ways. The officer cadet who arrives at the military academy, Sandhurst, will have drilled into them within hours the axiom that the only thing worse than a bad plan is no plan. And should they find themselves involved in their own personal Rorke's drift, informed that the enemy is bearing down on them in 20 minutes, they will know that they have 19 minutes to cobble together some form of acceptable plan, but then 1 minute to really sell that plan charismatically to their troops, to motivate them to get behind their commander and defeat the threat. And the officers of that cohort that are good at those two things will move on and get promoted at the first instance, and they will stay ahead of the pack. The best of them in the middle of their career will then get selected for the Venturi, for very senior rank, the higher command and staff course at the Defence Academy. And it would seem odd, wouldn't it, that such a course has a small bird as its symbol, but it does, the kingfisher. And that is because the kingfisher is taken from this quote: 9/10 of tactics are certain and taught in books, but the irrational tenth is like the kingfisher, flashing brilliantly across the pond, and that is the test of generals. An explicitly competitive course, it will rack and stack, and it will have winners and losers. They will be told that the fog of war will prevent them ever having enough information they would really want, but nevertheless, they must rely on their intuition and instinct. They must make decisions to maintain the initiative. They'll be introduced to phrases such as coup d'oeil, the ability to take in and appreciate a situation at a glance that has defeated all other observers, and seeing the core of the problem, then a kingfisher flash of brilliance, a fantastic plan, all pulled together and the enemy defeated. And all this comes together under the phrase operational art. Now, the winners in that course will be generals very shortly afterwards, and then they'll go and have a British Army General Officers course. Short course where in the middle week there will be a module taken by RADA, the Royal Academy for Dramatic Arts. And that is called You Have 7 Seconds. I think that's right from memory. And the idea being that in that 7 seconds you will create a first impression, and you need to be psychologically dominating. You need to already be on the front foot. So at the end now, as a general, after all of these courses, this training, their 25 years of experience, what are we dealing with? What are these heroic leaders? Well, as a theme of this conference is Statecraft, I thought I'd go and find a statesman. And this is interesting because it's a monograph written by retired Field Marshal Michael Carver, and he is quoting Churchill in 1937, who was writing about Marlborough. And sadly, the highlight hasn't come out there. But this is Churchill's ideal of the general. He talks about war's highest solution must be evolved from the eye and brain and soul of a single man. He dismisses the also-rans. Almost any intelligent scribe can draw up a lucid and logical treatise full of laboriously ascertained facts and technical phrases. And he goes on to conclude, nothing but genius, the demon in man, can answer the riddles of war, and genius cannot be acquired. Well, 6 years later, here is Churchill, a statesman, as war leader, and here are some of the generals that he has selected. Now, that's 80 years ago. Why is that important? I will argue the current senior leadership, certainly the UK military, still venerates these officers fighting a war at the apogee of the industrial age in World War II, and they still represent the ideal of senior leadership today. Now, just before I close by comparing that with the and ask whether this is appropriate as we go into the information age, then I think we will just go back, though, because it's illuminating to look at how we got into industrial age warfare. And this particular officer, Ulysses S. Grant, was not actually in the army when the US Civil War started. And we can pin the start of industrial age warfare pretty closely directly to 1861. He had left the army after a relatively indistinguished career in the 1850s. And as Keegan says, because a naturally reticent man, he had often lost out to the sharp elbows of the bustling, bonhomous, chance-grabbing optimists, i.e. heroic characters. Interestingly, Jacques Barzun declares those characters to be boosters, and the Brits in the audience will know that our political arena has been full of boosters and boosterism for the last couple of years, and boosters love heroic generals. So when Grant comes back into the army, he brings in, though, an experience of the dull but essential stuff, because he has specialised in logistics, in resupply, and in administration, which means when we get into the meat of the US Civil War, he is able to recognise that the character of war has changed. We now have industrial levels of production. We have much more lethal weaponry in artillery and rifles compared to what had gone before. We have the railroad, so that logistics, scale, speed, range, all at previously unimaginable levels. And down the railroad, we have telegraph poles. So now we have near instantaneous communication. All of this changes the character of war, and Grant brings in previous civilians as commissioned officers who have expertise in the railroad and the telegraph, and they start adapting these civilian technologies for the warfare of the then modern, the industrial age. So let us remember that as we skip forward. Now, going 80 back, we're going to go 160 forward to today. And now, as we move from the industrial to the information age, I think we all know what that means in our day-to-day lives. But it is interesting, isn't it? McKinsey's are now talking in industry and commerce about there being 6 levels of where artificial intelligence, machine learning, etc., can help with business strategy and the day-to-day management of companies. We are currently only at level 3, but that's already predictive intelligence, predicting where you're going to be, where the market's going to be, where the competitors are going to be, and therefore providing you with advice on both business strategy and day-to-day management. If we look at another sphere cropped up earlier on, another game of strategy, chess. Well, some grandmasters have lamented and regretted that for at least a decade now, no grandmaster has been able to beat a chess computer. Some have given up, but many have embraced it, and now they use chess computers plus a coach plus a data scientist to explain how all this works, to make themselves better grandmasters. They are now products of human-machine teaming when they go back and play other humans. So this is now man-machine teaming in doing strategy development. And at this point, in closing, I would normally extrapolate as to where I thought the future of warfare was going to go. But I don't need to now, because someone has already, if not done it, has certainly started doing it, and is certainly going in the right direction. The chap on the stage on the left is Mikhailo Fedorov, who was appointed by Zelensky in 2019, aged 28, having been a gifted tech startup guru, employed, as I say, aged 28, to digitize the Ukrainian government and its executive, including the armed forces. Obviously, that has accelerated through the Russian invasion. And just as Grant did, they are essentially taking the civilian technologies of the information age. They're using Starlink. They're taking Palantir's big data software for helping businesses understand themselves and run their businesses better. They're linking all this together with various sensors, such as commercially sourced drones. And what they've done is flattened the normal command structures, where normally there would be a hierarchical central node. Now you have sensors and shooters being able to engage Russian targets the moment they're found, with nodes that may not have existed until you needed to complete that. This fire support is now referred to in Ukraine as Uber fires, which just shows you how connected it is to the information age. I'm slightly, from a British perspective, saddened by this, because 1 year before he was appointed in 2018, the Defence Academy that you saw on the previous slide started writing about the possibilities of the information age and sketched all this and more. The British military, maybe, and certainly partially I think the effects of heroic leadership are at play here, has moved at a glacial pace and hardly modified at all. The Ukrainians have accelerated well ahead of us. So in closing, my suggestion here is that we need to go and talk to Ukrainians humbly. We need to ask them how they've done it, and we need to ask them what they've learnt. Now, of course, humility is not the first characteristic we instill in our heroic leaders. So my final point is to suggest that the command and leadership of the information age is going to have to change and transform, and we need to start thinking about that now to very deliberately change the whole business of alliance professional military education such that we develop the leaders we need who can be successful in information age warfare. Thank you.
Thank you. Edward, did you say that intuition is a gut feeling?
Yes, I mean, I'm not black and white on anything I've said. The gut feeling comes actually from that 25 years experience. Yeah. Intuition isn't, as Churchill said, the gift of genius. Often it's just the fact that you intuit. You've seen situations before. Yeah. Your judgment works. So there's an element of that.
Argue that the more experience you have, the better is your intuition.
I would agree with that. Yes.
Yeah.
But also what you're seeing now, and there's the famous move 37, for the people who follow the chess element. I think, Kenneth, you mentioned, didn't you, things like AlphaGo, AlphaZero earlier on. The machines are doing things that humans haven't done before. So almost they are showing intuition in a different way. So that whole question of intuition is now really quite interesting. I think Kenneth spoke very well about that.
I brought up this question this morning. What happens when your ally, artificial intelligence, becomes more intelligent than you and decides to run the war on its own in another way than you intend?
Yeah, and I think this is the beauty of alliances, actually, because all our countries here represented are investigating this in a slightly different way. China's only doing it one way. Russia's only doing it one way. So actually the power of the alliances is in cross-referring, which is why I'm very pleased to see what came out of the summit with Biden and Sunak when they started talking about really understanding where artificial intelligence is going. And once again, be humble. The next big development could come out of Estonia, it could come out of Sweden, it could come out of anywhere. It's not necessarily going to have to come out of one of the one of the great powers. And so there's a sort of shift, if you like, of power within alliances, because in the information age, the price of admission is quite low. And one of those small countries investing in tech, Israel is a good example, could suddenly steal a march on everybody.